Hey, it's Nikki, and today's episode is a special series called In the Loop, Communicating for Maximum Leadership Impact with my friends from Borshoff. I am a huge fan of the work Borshoff does to advance internal communication, and so happy that they have joined Gut Plus Science for a special series. Get ready for internal communication inspiration. There's so many nuggets of wisdom here.
Hey everyone, welcome to In the Loop, Communicating for Maximum Leadership Impact. I'm Katherine Coble, your host, and I'm really excited to bring you this monthly series that explores how you, as a leader, can become a better communicator. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. Change is hard. Well, at least that's what everyone says. I don't think change is actually that hard. I think it's just that we think of it as a destination when it's really a journey. And journeys have their ups and downs. If we're only focused on the end goal, we're likely to miss out on a lot of the important parts of creating successful change. When I think about change, I think about my journey as a runner. I first took up running because I was looking for a way to stay in shape and commit to a regular exercise routine. And I had a lot of friends who were runners, and they just kept pushing me to take up running. So I decided, reluctantly I might add, to start running. I told myself that I would commit to it for 30 days and then decide if I wanted to continue. But I had to do it for at least 30 days. Well, at first, I hated it. I really hated it. But I stuck with it, and it got a little easier. I started with running for just a minute at a time and then walking. I went into the neighborhood behind my house to run because I knew it was a simple loop and that I could do it and not get lost or get too far away from my house. And in those early days, I only went about a mile the first few times. Then I got up to 2 miles, then to 3. And then I was able to run without walking as much. And over the course of 30 days, I actually saw some progress. So I decided to stick with it. Now, early in my journey as a runner, people were immediately telling me, "Oh, you should run a marathon." And I would just laugh and say, "I don't think so." But over time, as I gained more confidence and as I continued to just repeat that 2 and 3 mile run, I thought, I could probably do a 5K. So I did. And then I started thinking about half marathons, and I did one of those. And then I thought, maybe I can do a marathon. And you know what? I did. Now, what's the point of this story? Well, it's not to tell you about my athleticism. I may be a runner, but the only race I'm winning is the one that's in my mind. And maybe that's actually my point. If you take up running for the first time in your life and your immediate goal is to run a marathon, you're probably in for some frustration and some heartache and probably some failure. But if instead your goal is to become a runner, you have picked what I think of as a being goal, not a doing goal. You see, being goals are so much more important and they last longer than doing goals. Think about the kind of person that you want to be and set a goal to become that person. It's much more rewarding than just doing. Now, when it comes to change, I think this is actually where leaders get it wrong. Major change in your organization is about what type of organization you want to be, not what the end goal is that you're working toward. Change in our organizations is actually about building new habits and creating new mindsets. When you approach change from this point of view, you're going to create something that lasts. To put this in a business context, I'll share a little story. I recently had a client who was rolling out a huge new technology system. This was a pretty significant change to the organization, but it wasn't just a matter of swapping out one system for another. This change would really require employees to think differently about how they did their work, why they collected the data that they collected, and how they could leverage that to make better business decisions. So it's not just a matter of turning on a new system and turning off an old one. This required a total mindset shift, as well as some new behaviors and some new patterns. And that can take some time to settle into the DNA of any organization. Now, as leaders, it's our responsibility to connect our teams to the vision that we have for the organization. And people can't grasp someone else's vision if they can't find a way to make it their own. So today I want to talk with you about some thoughts on how to communicate change in your organization in a way that employees can really connect to. Change typically starts at the top. We as leaders often initiate change. And as the initiators of change, we typically have been thinking about change way before anyone else in our organization even knows about it. Also, as leaders, sometimes we're impatient. I know, shocking, right? When those two things combine, we can forget what it's like to experience change from the employee point of view. Our employees need time to process and to understand. They haven't been inside of our heads. They haven't been in our planning meetings or in the conversations we've had that revealed the need for change in the first place. So we have to give our employees time and we have to give them context to really understand and embrace change if it's going to be successful. Now, there's a saying that I've heard about change, and it goes something like this. Change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. Well, I don't really like this quote because from the very beginning, it sets up this idea that change is painful and that no one wants to change and that change is something we suffer through only after we've suffered through a period of not changing. Well, if that's our standard, then it's no wonder no one wants to change. But I think change is really more of a mindset. Now, in the workplace, change can feel very scary to employees because they often associate change with their competence. As soon as we start telling employees that they're going to have to do something different, they're going to have to learn something new, their natural fear is that they will be inadequate. They might be confused or unable to meet the new expectation. Other people love the challenge of something new. They are invigorated by mixing things up, and they see challenges as opportunities. But in my experience, this is typically the minority. Even high performers in our organizations often fall into the category of being change averse. Now, over the years, I've seen a lot of resistance to change inside of organizations. But a lot of the resistance to change that we see can be resolved with communication and with patience on the part of leadership. First, you have to understand what it is you're looking at. And over the years, I've realized that there are actually 3 interesting quirks about change. The first quirk, what looks like resistance, is often confusion. When it comes to change, we may see what we think is resistance from our employees. They start asking questions like, well, where are we going? Why are we changing? Why is the old way no longer good? It feels like they're resisting the change, but really they're just confused or unclear about this new idea that you're trying to introduce. We have to do a better job of setting up the change and helping people really understand what we want them to do and why. And we have to keep repeating it over and over again. You may have known about this change for a while, but again, your employees may need more time to process. A good solution for this is to plan for change and to plan to communicate about the change. Spend some time before you introduce a change, thinking through all of the questions, the fears, or the concerns that employees might have. What are the answers to their questions? And how can you communicate clearly and repeatedly about the change? Quirk number 2. What looks like disinterest is often exhaustion. Sometimes when we see what looks like disinterest, it really is just that employees are exhausted. I mean, think about it. Change requires energy. We're creating new habits. We're learning new things. We're taking new paths. We as leaders must keep communicating about what comes next and affirming the things that people are doing that are contributing to progress. In his book about the 6 types of working genius, author Pat Lencioni describes this trait as galvanizing. If you aren't by nature the kind of manager who can galvanize people to stay focused on a goal and do it in an inspiring way, find someone on your team who can and ask them to be your partner in this effort. You don't have to do it all. Just recognize your strengths and build a team to help you. Okay, here's the third quirk about change. What looks like a people problem is often just a situation problem. How many times have we all been guilty of thinking, well, if my people would just fill in the blank? This implies that the problem is with them. If you ever find yourself saying, my people won't, you've got to change your thinking to, I haven't led my people to. It really is on you as the leader to create a vision and to communicate it well. Now, we as leaders must set up a situation that brings out the good in people. We have to ask for feedback and understand where there's confusion, where there is exhaustion, where there is competing priorities. And the only way we can do that is if we make sure that the conversation is two-way. Now, as you plan your communication strategy around change, there are typically 6 questions that employees have about change. Here they are. What is changing? What will it mean for me? What do I have to do? Why are we doing it? Does it make sense? Do I have to change or will this go away? Let me repeat those again. What is changing? What will it mean for me? What do I have to do? Why are we doing it? Does it make sense? And do I have to change or will this go away? I love that last one. If you don't have answers for all of these questions, you risk leaving a vacuum that employees are going to fill with their own answers. Now, sometimes you may not have all the details when you start going through a change, and that's okay. Transparency and vulnerability in your communications can really help your team understand that this change is truly a journey and that they are a part of determining the path that you take, meaning they can help the organization successfully navigate the change with their actions and with their contributions. We want people to feel like they're a part of the change, not that the change is happening to them. And the way you communicate about change can make or break your ability to guide the organization through it successfully. And successful communication is built on truly understanding your audience. So let's talk about where your employees are at when you embark on a major change. Now, if you know me, you know I'm a voracious reader. I already mentioned Pat Lencioni. I'm going to mention another one. I have a book recommendation for you almost every time. A great book that I've read about the change process was published back in 2010, but the principles are really timeless and they really get to this idea of understanding where people are at when you introduce change. This book is called Switch: How to Change When Things Are Hard by Chip and Dan Heath. Now, in this book, the Heath brothers share the fundamental reason that we often think change is hard. It just boils down to our human nature and the fact that our brains, and therefore our actions, are ruled by 2 competing systems. We have a rational side and we have an emotional side. Now, the rational side of our mind believes it's in control. It uses logic, data. That's how it guides our actions. And that typically works pretty well until you encounter difficulty or some sort of uncertainty. Sometimes the emotional side comes along for the ride. And the emotional side is focused on comfort, instant gratification, and avoidance of pain. Now, the emotional side isn't all bad. It's where a lot of our strength comes from and our passion. So we really do need both sides. And as leaders who are trying to bring change to our organization, we have to appeal to both sides of the brain. A lot of times we only focus on the rational side. We tell people that we need them to make a change and we lay out all the facts and the reasons why, and we just expect them to say, okay, I'll do it. But of course, it's not that simple. So what can we do to ensure that we're communicating and connecting to our employees' rational side and to the emotional side? Well, first, let's talk about the rational appeal, because even though that seems pretty straightforward, we don't always get it right. To appeal to the rational side of a person's mind, it's really critical that we're giving clear direction. One of the ways to do this that the Heath brothers recommend is to script the critical moves, meaning when we communicate about change, we must give employees clear, specific direction. So back to my running example. Instead of telling me to go out for a run regularly during the week, my coach should be telling me to go out 4 times this week and each time run 2 miles with walk breaks between each mile. Being specific like that can help people really wrap their head around a change and focus on what I can do right now to move forward. But it's not just about being specific. It's also about being focused on what's realistic. If any of you are familiar with Dave Ramsey, the financial guru, you know that this sort of baby step approach is one of his signatures. He tells people who are trying to get out of debt to start with the smallest debt first, and when that's paid off, move on to the next one. This helps you get momentum and to see progress. It's a specific task that you can focus on, and it really feels doable. It's kind of bite size. And it gets you a small win so that you can build that momentum that you need to keep going. Chip and Dan Heath offer a lot of other great ideas on appealing to the rational side, and I'd encourage you to read about those in their book. So I won't go into those in any more detail here. Let's go ahead and look now at the emotional side, though. We often think that it's our job as leaders to motivate our teams and to inspire them to action. The truth is, motivation comes from inside each of us. So we as leaders, we can't motivate people. We can only point them to the reasons that they could own as their own motivation. So to appeal to the emotional side, we just need to help people find the feeling that sparks motivation. Knowing something is the right thing to do just isn't enough. People have to feel something to take action. So what can we do to spark that feeling? Should we demonstrate something and shock them? Should we tell a story that builds attention about why the change is needed? Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I once had a client that wanted to get her executive leadership group to greenlight some pretty significant diversity and inclusion work that she felt the company needed. And this was a really large company, and her team had commissioned some pretty extensive research with employees. And they had found that the employee journey for minority groups in the company was a bit rocky and inconsistent. Now, she knew if she wanted to get these leaders on board with her strategy for a culture shift, she would need to really get their attention. She'd have to disrupt what they knew about their company from their executive vantage point and help them to really visualize what employees were experiencing. You know, something that would hit them in the pit of their stomachs to realize we need to take action on this for the good of the employees and the good of the company. So instead of just presenting the data about employee experiences in yet another PowerPoint, we helped her to develop a series of videos that featured actors dramatically representing the experiences that employees had. The storytelling brought the issues to life and created emotion in the room. It was a powerful moment, and it moved the leadership to commit time and resources to improving the employee experience. And their commitment to the work stayed strong throughout the process. We were shifting culture, we were making necessary improvements to the employee experience, and that work takes time. Now, appealing to the rational and the emotional side in our communication is critical, but there's one last and possibly most important step that we as leaders can do to lead successful change, and it's shaping the environment where the change is happening. What I mean by this is that we can do things in our organizations to make the journey of change a little bit easier. Shaping the environment might mean that we're removing distractions or barriers to help make the right behaviors a little easier and the wrong behaviors a little harder. And from a communication perspective, we can shape the environment by rallying the herd. What I mean by that is people do what people see. So when some employees are embracing the change well, we should celebrate that. We have to share it with others so that they can see what we're talking about. Communicating these examples, these small wins, that's going to go a long way to driving the behaviors that we want to see toward the change. Now, as I close today, I just want to encourage you. Change can be hard, but you have the power to influence those around you. Your words and your actions as a leader are powerful. Remember that employees, really all of us, are rational and emotional beings. We're more likely to embrace a change when both of those sides are addressed. Have patience, stay the course, and appeal to both the rational and the emotional side of your audience. When you do this, your team is going to feel in the loop and connected to your vision. And your change journey is going to lead to success.
We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.